I'm not gonna lie, it's been an insane last few hours when you really talk about the sports industry in general. I feel like a lot of us yesterday were watching the Chicago Cubs versus the Green Bay Packers, and it was an absolutely insane game. I'm a Packers fan. It hurt. It was one of the worst things to watch. But during the middle of the game, you're just watching the Chicago Bears come back, and you see this tweet now from the Chicago Cubs that they finally signed that long-awaited batter. And you know, a lot of people would have guessed, oh, maybe it's Bichette, because you know they've been linked towards Bichette for the longest time. Maybe it's Cody Bellinger, because at one point they said maybe Cody Bellinger returns to the Cubs. Or hey, you know, the Cubs had Kyle Tucker last year. Maybe they finally agreed to a deal. No, they go sideways and they say, hey, we're gonna sign Alex Bregman to a 5-year deal. Let's talk about it. Whoa. Before the video starts, if you guys can do me a huge favor, if you like MLB content and you like watching it, you know, every single week, please subscribe, like, comment, let me know what you guys want to see. I'm trying to grow this channel as much as I can. Once again, please subscribe. Anyways, on to the video. When you talk the Chicago Cubs so far, and if you analyze and look into it, the Chicago Cubs have had a really strong free agency thus far. The rotation's absolutely insane. What the Cubs have done with the rotation is great. As of recent, they recently traded for Edward Cabrera, which makes the rotation fabulous. This includes Cade Horton, which Cade Horton had a amazing strong end of season last year before, you know, of course, before the injuries, but he looks absolutely fantastic, was an absolutely great prospect. So you add Edward Cabrera, you add Cade Horton, you re-sign Shota Imanaga for that 1 year. You're also getting Justin Steele back. You have Matthew Boyd, who performed pretty good last season for them. So the rotation's already strong when it comes to pitching. The Cubs look strong in those aspects. Now, when you look into the Cubs, and one of the biggest things that was talked about is how Kyle Tucker is most likely not going to re-sign to the Cubs, and he's going to look for other teams to get a long contract, a payday at this point in time. He wants a long-term deal, which the Cubs, from what it looks like, they were not able to get to an agreement on a long-term deal. Now, with that being said, I think a lot of Chicago fans were looking forward to, or were trying to, you know, grasp for straws at one point to see if they could get Kyle Tucker back, because Kyle Tucker, although he did have a rough end of the season, and he, in honesty, it just was unfortunate what happened with him when it comes to the injuries, he had a really strong season with the Cubs during the beginning, during the middle. It's just towards the end, it kind of fell off with all the injuries and just the slumps coming up. Now, with Kyle Tucker eventually just not being an option for the Chicago Cubs, they were linked towards many different batters, to the point where it's just like, where exactly are the Cubs going to land? Now, when speaking about batters, once again, you look at all the options and all the trade rumors that came up with the Cubs, and they were linked towards a lot of different batters, one being in Bichette, who had a great season with the Toronto Blue Jays and still has not signed a contract anywhere. But as of now, Bichette is most likely looking like it's going to be a Phillies signing, because he did end up going towards a visit towards the Phillies. So the Cubs were not able to land there. Then you look at Kyle Tucker. Once again, Kyle Tucker not able to get a deal there. Another person that they were also leaning towards is someone that they're familiar of, which is Cody Bellinger, which they had in the 2024 season. So there was a lot of different options, and at one point nobody knew what exactly the Cubs were going to land. They just were knowing that they were linked towards a lot of trade rumors. Well, the Chicago Cubs finally got their answer. They finally got their batter randomly last night in the middle of a football game. Jeff Passan, ex-legend right there, sent out a tweet, or whatever you want to call it. It's X. Sent out a tweet saying that Alex Bregman officially signed with the Chicago Cubs. They finally got a deal done. It's 5 years for $175 million. This includes so there's a no trade clause. There's no opt-outs. The Chicago Cubs are stuck with Alex Bregman, which, hey, you know, that seems like a great issue to have, in all honesty. This is after Alex Bregman opted out with the Red Sox. He opted out of a $40 million player option from the Red Sox, which, in all honesty, Alex Bregman was looking for something long-term. And it's quite nostalgic when you look back at it, because the Chicago Cubs were trying to get Alex Bregman as of last year. They fell short because the Boston Red Sox did end up beating them, and now Alex Bregman returns back to Chicago and signs a 5-year deal with them. No opt-outs, no trade clause. Hey, Chicago, he's all yours for the next 5 years when you look at it. When you look into Alex Bregman, it looks, from what it looks like a great signing. You look at his stats from last year, he had a 3.5 WAR, although one of the biggest issues that Alex Bregman did end up having was that quad injury that he sustained in May, and he was out for quite a few weeks. He did come back, but it did affect how he was playing. Overall, he did finish the season with a .273 batting average with an OPS of .821, which is still great. And in 2024 is when he had his Golden Glover award. He ended that season with a batting average of .260 in Houston with an OPS of .768. So he's been solid all around. It's just one of the biggest things that he needs, that has been an issue for him, is just the injuries. If you get a healthy Alex Bregman, you have an absolutely dominant player on the field. So they have a third baseman that is fantastic, but that leads to a bunch of questions when it comes to Matt Shaw, who was a prospect that came up last year. Matt Shaw's position, number one position that he always plays, is third baseman. He did have quite a few struggles when it came to last year, but with that being said, Alex Bregman's addition brings a lot of depth, because Matt Shaw is one of those players that you could use infield in multiple different positions, because when it came to the minors, when it came to college, he played shortstop, he played second base, which is very beneficial when it comes to depth. But once again, this opens up a lot of questions for the Chicago Cubs, because they do have a lot of decisions to make. Although it's not this year, they have a lot of decisions to make for next year, and these decisions could be made this year. When it comes to Ian Happ, when it comes to Seiya Suzuki, these two are going to hit the free agency market next year. They're going to be free agents. You also have to talk about Nico Hoerner, who's also going to be a free agent next year. Nico Hoerner is a second baseman. So when you look into it, it's either Matt Shaw's position is very interesting, because to a certain point, is the Chicago Cubs going to extend Nico Hoerner, or are they possibly hoping that Matt Shaw progressively gets better, because he did struggle a lot last year? Are they hoping that Matt Shaw progressively gets better, so to the point where once free agency hits next year, they could just put Matt Shaw at the second baseman, they could leave Alex Bregman in the third base? But that still leads to the issues of the Cubs not having a lot of outfield positions. Yes, they have a fantastic player in Pete Crow Armstrong, but once again, you're losing Suzuki, you're losing Ian Happ, so you have two openings when it comes to there. You also have Kevin Alcantara, which great player, but once again, you have quite a few openings when it comes to that place. Now, another option that they could actually use, but once again, it's going to be very interesting what the Chicago Cubs do end up doing, is they could potentially trade away Matt Shaw and try to find a player that could fill in that outfield position that will possibly be a hole for next year. But once again, you still have a year of Ian Happ and Suzuki, so you're also hoping that Kevin Alcantara shows some great aspects, because once again, that's a great young player that has shown a few good glimpses, but once again, the sample size is just very small when it comes to that. So maybe you give Kevin Alcantara a few chances this year. You have Pete Crow Armstrong up there, so it leaves to just one hole. But it's going to be very interesting what they decide to do with Matt Shaw, and who they're gonna end up re-signing, if that's gonna be Suzuki, if that's gonna be Nico Hoerner, if that's gonna be Ian Happ. So there's quite a few decisions that the Cubs are gonna have to end up making, and it's just gonna be very interesting to see what they end up doing. Anyway, guys, I really want to hear from you. I want to see what you guys think. What do you think the Cubs are gonna end up doing, not only this year but next year? If you guys could do me a huge favor, if you guys could subscribe, like, comment, let me know what you guys want to see next. I'm really enjoying doing these videos, and I really do appreciate the support. Anyways, guys, I'll catch you on the other side. Bye.